Okay, and we're back with episode 5 of the PF podcast, also known as The Annihilation of Pro Science. This time we're going to have another notable figure from the server. This time a youngin, an active youngin, and I'm sure you all know him as Symbol. But do you know anything more about him? Tell us more about yourself, Symbol.
Yeah, so what's up? Hello, everyone who's listening. I hope you're having a fantastic day and you learn something or you have just fun listening. My real name's actually Tim Lorenz. I'm 16 years old. I come from Germany, and right now my ambitions are in powerlifting. I try to get as strong as I can. I try to be a good powerlifter, and yeah, on the server I help people out a lot. Maybe you know me from there, and yeah, that's about it. I will pass the word back to you.
A very humble kid, aren't you, Tim? Now,
Thank you.
something that a lot of people may not realize, at least more of the newcomers, is that you didn't actually start out with free weights, now did you?
Yeah, I didn't start out with free weights, and I actually did want to start out with free weights. For me as a kid, I was inspired by huge, strong guys who had lots of muscle and were really strong, and I didn't get the opportunity to do that because I have no gyms nearby, and my parents had no time to ever take me to a gym, so I had to start training at home. And I really got into calisthenics about 2 years ago, and I trained calisthenics for about a year and a couple of months.
Yeah, so starting out with calisthenics, how did that go for you? Like in terms of muscle gains, hypertrophy, strength, and what did you do for calisthenics? Pull-ups, dips, anything?
Yeah, a lot of people, when they think of calisthenics, they think of these crazy skills where people are doing human flags and planches and whatnot. For me, that wasn't really the goal. I was not too interested in that. I tried it for a couple of months. Didn't work out too well for me, so I kind of just went back to training calisthenics for strength. And my main movements were dips and pull-ups. I tried to get strong at those, using a little bit of weights and some rings I had laying around. And yeah, that was basically the main portion of my training, just trying to get stronger at those. And then something that surprised a few people was the amount of leg gains I made while training. And I think part of that just comes down to finding a solution in your training. It's really hard to overload your legs on calisthenics, but I'm sure if you do pistol squats with a lot of weight, for example, they're gonna grow just fine. It's just a bit difficult to find a solution.
Yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of people are going to criticize calisthenics for, especially the elitist calisthenics dudes who are doing strictly just body weight with no added weight, which I think you and me can both agree is pretty stupid not to like add weight when you can, right?
Yeah, I think it's just not good to be elitist to just conform to one training. So there are benefits to using weights, there are benefits to not using weights. And I think you should be doing both at some point in your training. There's no point to limit your weighted chin up. How are you going to go from one chin up to a one arm chin up, for example, if you are never using weights, if you're never finding a way to overload between that, to bridge that gap?
Well, definitely. I mean, it is possible, but I mean, if you have weights, you might as well just use them, right? So with your calisthenic gains, tell us like what strength gains did you manage to get? Like how strong did you got in like dips, pull-ups with rings, and your pistol squats?
Yeah, so for the push-ups, pull-ups, and dips, and all of the upper body movements, it was funny because when I started, I didn't even have a proper place to train back, and my push-ups were terrible. I was around 64 kilograms in weight, I think. It was 2 years ago. I was 14, just starting out, just turned 14 at that point, and I couldn't even do a push-up. It took me, I think, 2 months just to get a proper push-up. I was always the weak kid in class, getting bullied because I couldn't do any in sports, and yeah, I kind of started getting the hang of it, and then I started training for pull-ups, got my first pull-up a couple months in, and yeah, I think my best numbers at the start of 2021 when I switched to weight training were I had a ring dip with 30 kilograms, I had a weighted chin-up with 30 kilograms, and my best pistol squat, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 25 kilograms in a bag for like 10 or 15 reps, but I also had a hand on a wall just to support myself for balance, so that might have helped.
Oh no, no man! Like taking the balancing component out of like single leg training is completely valid. I don't know what it is with some people, thinking that the balance component is a must-have when it comes to single leg training. Like if it's just hypertrophy or strength, just take the balance component out. You're not some ballroom dancer or some ice skater. But aside from that, that's some pretty serious strength gains. Like, how long did it take you to go from like barely being able to do a push up to achieving all that at, I think, the same body weight, 64, 65 kilograms?
It was not quite the same body weight. I actually started at like 64, 65 kilograms, and I went all the way up to 74 or 75 in that time span. And it was I think it was 1.5 years. Yeah, I think it was a year and like 5 months of time it took me.
Okay, that's insane, honestly. Like, I mean, for some people or who don't realize how long it takes to make gains, they might think that might take a long time. But honestly, to not only be 10 kilograms heavier, but also to have all those calisthenics gains and PRs, while simultaneously slowly getting 10 kilograms heavier in just about a year or so, is pretty damn solid, man. Like, congrats to you, dude. And you were only like 15 at the time, too, weren't you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I just turned 16 about 3 months ago, so I was 15 during that process, 14 and 15.
Yeah,
But yeah,
man.
I think it is good strength gains, and I was really happy with the progress I made. I still am. I think I learned a lot during the time as well. But I think a lot of people, when it comes to calisthenics, they just don't try hard enough to structure their training properly. And I think most of the more hardcore lifters, people who put in a lot of effort, track their weight, macros, protein, make sure they're doing it all right, they just move on to weightlifting. And that's why calisthenics, I feel like, has a bit of worse programming habits as than weightlifting and powerlifting.
Oh, totally, totally. I don't know what it is with bodyweight, but people always treat bodyweight like with some beginner stuff. But and then you have people like you and me who treat bodyweight seriously and actually make decent gains on them. Like, honestly, I I'm sure you feel as well. Whenever we get people in the server who come in saying that they only have dumbbells to work with or they have nothing at all to work with, and they're always worried about the gains or strength gains they can make, even though like you yourself, me, and then there's also Rice from the server who's living proof that you can make pretty solid gains on even just body weight alone if you don't have any weight to work with.
Yeah, and then when you look at the bigger guys, I mean, there are elites and power, and I mean, in yeah, street workout as well. There are some guys. I remember seeing this one man from Russia. I don't know his name anymore, but he was doing, what was it, 32 kilograms on pull-ups for 20 reps or 19 reps, or 16 kilograms for 30 reps. And these are not heavy weights. It's not like you can't find 20 kilograms. That's a bag of heavy rocks. That's all it is. And these guys are getting absolutely massively strong from it, and they find ways to make it work. And then there are people who say, "Yeah, I only have 8 kilogram dumbbells. How will I ever get big biceps?" Well, try doing a chin up. Try doing something with your body weight added to it.
No, yeah, especially if you're on the heavier side, like that's a lot of weight right there just to make gains with. So then, obviously, having just calisthenics is great and all, but it's not always the ideal per se. Since if you have access to both, why not just do both? So, how did you find yourself transitioning from calisthenics to free weights, and how did you actually be able to make that transition?
Well, I had no chance to train at a gym for the longest time. So while I was training for calisthenics, I was saving up money and trying to afford myself a home gym. And eventually, around April last year in 2021, I did manage to get everything together. I had a barbell, I had a rack, I had tons of weights, I think up to 200 kilograms or something like that. I had a good bench. And I started training powerlifting. And yeah, it was a fun experience because on my first day of actually powerlifting, of trying out barbell movements, I deadlifted 120 kilograms. And it's funny to me because a lot of people say, oh, yeah, calisthenics doesn't get you strong at all. This wasn't anything I had trained for. It's not like I had done deadlifts secretly. I was just doing pull-ups and not even proper leg movements, not even good hamstring training I had, and I
Yeah.
still managed to deadlift 120. And yeah, when I moved into it, one of the main things I noted is, despite people always saying that calisthenics has a lot of core training, it requires brutal core strength. Sure, it does, but the demands are different in barbell training. What I found really difficult was bracing my core and my spinal erectors, my lower back. It was just not strong enough. Because all I was doing was pull-ups, dips, and these general upper body movements, which didn't really train the erectors.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now that's actually a really solid criticism. And difference between free weights and calisthenics is that yeah, you get stupidly strong on both, but the core demands that calisthenic will demand of you out of powerlifting movements per se is completely different. I still remember back in when you started transitioning, you you were pretty lost when it came to how to brace, even though you knew that you had a strong core, but because you've never had to use it in the same way as say like having a hollow body versus being braced for squat, you definitely needed some time to learn how to brace properly to use your core in that way before you could properly exert your strength on those barbell movements.
Yeah, and another thing that surprised me a bit was how linear my gains were at the start. I was able to progress and just keep adding and keep adding and keep adding to these lifts. And the main reason just because they were new. I just hadn't done them before. And yeah, when I looked at my dips and my pull-ups, they were remaining pretty stagnant or just progressing quite slowly. And I just wasn't getting that much out of them at that time. And then when I started doing bench press again, I just my pecs exploded. All of it just started coming together. I started making gains. I started out pressing like 60 kilograms. I think a month later or so I was doing 70 or 75, and it just kept going up. And the same thing on deadlifts, squats, just because these are new movements. And I encourage anybody, if they've been doing the same lift for ages, just to try out something new, a different variation, something that can give them a little bit of new stimulus.
Oh, totally, totally. Like the world is your oyster. There's so many different ways to train and different exercise variations or training variations, which I'm sure you and me are both big fans of Pioneer, who promotes such a way because there's so many things that you can adapt to and so many new ways to get new stimulus to maybe want to, and even if they don't directly translate to whatever goal you have right now, maybe eventually they will. Like having better work capacity could translate to being a stronger powerlifter in the long term. Who knows? As long as you plan it out and progress it properly. But moving on, like you're still like 15, and at least most of the time when you were in the survey, you were 14, 15, you were just recently turned 16. So obviously there's training, moving on from calisthenics to free weights. But in the meantime, there's also just schoolwork. And you said that you saved up money. So I assume that you also had a job at the time. So how do you manage all that together?
I mean, I didn't actually have a proper job. I was just giving private tutoring at the time. I still do that sometimes. I mow lawns in the neighborhood. I just do a little bit of work. I sell old things. I buy things for cheap that I can find and resell them. I don't really work. I just put in time to make a little bit of money. And yeah, managing it with school, it's difficult at times. I have a tight schedule on some days. For example, just next Tuesday, I'm going to have to wake up at 6 a.m., get ready for school. I'll be in school till 5 p.m. I'll get home at like 6 because my bus schedule is terrible. Then I have to get home and I'll have a terribly long training session, and in the evening I even have to give a little bit of online private tutoring. So it's a really tight day for me. I don't have like any time to just fully relax. And at the same time I still have to cook for myself. I do that all the time. But yeah, to be fair, it's difficult. It gets to you at times. But it's worth it because of what you get out of it in the end. These days, you go to bed and you're happy that you did something. You're happy that you put in effort, you work towards your goals, and you're seeing the progress that's happening because of it. I think it's just worth it. It's a trade-off I'm willing to take. It's a trade-off that's good. And if you really have a goal, you really want to go to the gym, you really want to get stronger, you can manage it with your time. I think everybody can to some extent. And it's just worth it if it matters to you, if it's something that's important. That's totally a worth it trade-off to take.
Oh man, yeah. Hearing you talk about all that kind of actually reminds me of what high school was like for me, where because we had to like drive to school, so I get up like 5:50, be at school like 6:10, and sometimes get back at like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Then there's tuition at night as well. Like it's pretty nostalgic hearing someone else also go through all that and yet still making time for training as well. Then it's frustrating. I get it. Like it is hard and everything, but it's even more frustrating when you hear other people who have way more time than you do come up with excuses that they don't have enough time to train or to study or whatever, and here you are being incredibly busy with your schedule, and then you also cook for yourself as well, and yet you still find time to like help people out in the server, cook for yourself, train, and even just help people out with their programming as well. I know that you do some programs for some people in the server as well.
That is true. I do that in my free time sometimes, and that's actually one of the funny parts because it's not really work for me. It's not really anything I have to sit down and actually do. It's something I do when I'm bored or when I have free time because it's fun for me. I just like trying to find solutions in training. I like trying to find people solutions in their schedules and figure out solutions to the problems they might have. And yeah, some people really do make excuses for everything and say they don't have the time when they clearly do. And I think that's just where it becomes clear. These people have goals, and these goals take effort, and for them the importance of the goals is lesser than the effort it takes. It's not worth it to them. But if they then end up complaining and saying, "Yeah, I don't have the time. It's awful. You just don't have such a bad situation as me." That's just them trying to make excuses and trying to talk to themselves that they are doing everything right and we wouldn't do it any different either.
Man, yeah, it rattles my gears as well, man. Because we do get people like that a lot, honestly, like all the time, and we know that they're just making excuses and all because we've lived through schedules that were way worse than they had, and even then, like there's you right now, and usually the people that we get who come across who make excuses like this are your age group as well, teenagers. And honestly, as I mean, aside from you, I'd say that your schedule is sort of an outlier. But as someone who's also been a teenager before, who's had a crazy schedule, I've also had a very free schedule as a teenager. Because honestly, when you're in high school, it's probably the time of your life where you have the most free time to goof off. There's like way too much free time for you to goof off and like do your own thing. And just hearing teenagers like that also come up with excuses, and then there's you right here who's living proof of actually living a busy schedule and still making it work. It's like night and day. So proud of you, man.
Thank you. That's actually puts a little bit of a smile on my face to hear, man. I really try my best to make it work and work for my goals. Yeah, you're right about the having free time. I mean, right now I'm on vacation. I think I've done nothing but 2 weeks of just, I don't know, chilling and doing a bit of nothing. And yeah, tough times are there and easy times like this as well. In the end, I do have to say, sometimes I do prefer busy schedules because there's just not time to think about bad things, to get sad or whatever. There's no time to think, oh, you're not doing enough because you're doing something all the time. These busy schedules kind of make me happy. It's kind of what drives me. I think there's a saying somewhere from some philosopher or something, which goes something like, make hard decisions and you live an easy life, and the other way around. So make easy decisions and you live a hard life.
Oh damn.
And I really agree with that, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really powerful quote. I wish we could know who said that. We can always Google it up later. But yeah, so I mean, alongside with school and everything, I'm sure as a teenager yourself, with a social media and somewhat of a following, there's definitely the influence of social media on you and your training philosophies and how you approach training. How do you think that affects you and maybe your peers?
I think social media is a great place and a terrible place at the same time. Because there's obviously tons of great information out there. Without the Picturefit server, I probably would have never even gotten into training to the extent that I do it now. Without people like Renaissance Periodization or Alexander Bromley and all of these great sources of information on the internet, I would have never had my training this well structured, or my diet, my sleep, everything. There's so much positive stuff out there. But at the same time, beginners and my peers, they don't have the eye to scan what's not good information and what is. and so they just end up falling for some bullshit, and yeah, their training ends up being terrible, or they are scared of certain movements, and social media has a lot of that, where people give out bad advice and they make you fearful of movement, and you end up hurting yourself because of it.
Yeah. So, but then we have people like you who are actually doing good for themselves and who also have a social media following. So, like, how's your? I believe you have an Instagram. I'm not sure if you have a. I don't remember if you have a TikTok, but do you have a TikTok? And how's that been going? Like Instagram, TikTok, and all.
I don't actually have a TikTok. I don't even use the platform. I think it's not a good platform to be on, mostly because of the short attention span it gives you, and how little good information there actually is on there, and how much bad information there is on there. But I do have an Instagram. It started out just as my personal Instagram account, and I just decided to post some videos of my training on there. It's really nothing too special. I don't try to give advice a lot. I don't try to uh, do anything motivational or something. I just put out my personal progress. It's like a bit of a training blog, if anything. Just a bit of a page to look back at what I was doing at what time with training. So yeah, some people have been inspired by it. I'm happy that in school every now and then people even recognize me because of it, and they ask me for training advice, or they tell me they're proud of me, they're happy that I've made this change and I put in so much work. It makes some people happy to see me succeed. At the same time, you have other people who are really poorly influenced by social media, and they come up to me and tell me, "Yeah, you're gonna break your knees. You're gonna hurt your back. You will herniate a disc, and you will die in sleep because of back pain." So there's really a broad spectrum of responses, to be fair.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of responding, didn't you say that your teacher also commented on your Instagram post or something?
Yeah, it's not directly commented, but it's funny. There is a teacher at my school who did, for some reason, find out about my Instagram, and they actually complimented for me for it. They told me it was great to actually have ambitions and to be hardworking, to have dreams that you work for, and to be physically active. And it's a teacher I've known for a long time, and they do actually know that I used to be a bit more of the chubby kid. I used to be very unathletic and really bad at sports, and yeah, they complimented me on the change. And that really kind of showed me that it's just nothing to be ashamed of. I think some people, they make a big deal out of training. When I started, I hid in my bedroom and did push-ups, and whenever somebody came in, I immediately stopped. Made it look like I was just breathing heavily for no reason, because I was scared. I was embarrassed to be seen as someone who tries to do sports and fails miserably. I was scared of failing. Yeah, and now it shows me that even people like teachers in a formal setting, even they think it's a good thing. There's really nothing bad that comes of training, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, you started off as like always the weakest kid in school or in your class, and now look at you. You're probably the strongest kid in your school right now, I believe. Well, highly likely at least.
I think that could be possible, yeah. I'm not too sure though. I don't really go around asking people what their PRs are all the time, so I'm not sure. Could be.
But speaking about like people at school knowing that you live and all, has there been any peer pressure or like how's that environment felt for you going from just the average kid to now like people in school and even teachers now knowing that you live coming up to you for advice or even giving bad advice to you? But like, how's the social environment been like that in school now?
It's been mostly positive, to be fair. I've had a lot of people just be friendly to me, say they like what I do, they want to start as well. I might give them advice. I've had tons of people in real life ask me for a bit of advice, and that's always made me a bit happy just to see that someone thinks I'm reliable, someone thinks I'm inspiring, and they want to be like me a bit. Yeah, I've always been a fan of that, and yeah, the environment is just vastly positive. The few negative things I get are mostly people saying, "Oh yeah, at least I'm not an idiot like you and break my body, and you're way too young for that." There's a lot of misinformation. Some people actually do learn. I teach them about the proper way to think about these things, the injury mechanics, that it's not dangerous for me to lift. But some people, they just keep telling themselves that that's true, and they never end up lifting.
Yeah, it's a shame, honestly, with how much bad information is out there and just people blindly believing in it without actually looking things up or like being open to learn from sources who could teach you. But also knowing now that how much you've changed from, as you said earlier, being from always the weakest kid in class to now being one of the strongest, if not likely the strongest, at least in your class. Like, how does it feel to be strong for your age? Like, you have pretty decent lifts now, right? Like, what are your squat, bench, deadlift at the moment?
The body weight is 80 or 81 kilograms. My squat, the highest I've done was 140 kilograms, but I think I have like 150, 155 in me. Bench is 90. I should be able to do like 95, and my deadlift is maximum at 200 kilograms. That's undeniably like my best lift out of the three. And strong for the age. To be fair, I think strong for the age is not really a good way to think about the things. I don't consider myself like really strong for the age. And that might be because of how I've been influenced, that I always see people who are similarly strong, at least on social media. But to be fair, strong for the age is a bit of a meme in my opinion. And the reason for that is, we all, for example, we know that one kid in high school who was 15, but they looked 25. That the physical development of a 25-year-old, a full beard, deep voice, 6'5" tall. And I just think it's unfair to say that that's your average 15-year-old. The physical age is different, in my opinion, than the biological age. And so if these people start training, they're not going to be strong like a 15-year-old. They're going to progress like a 20 or 25-year-old because they're just physically older. And also, I mean, a 15-year-old, they can make good progress. It's not like they're cursed to make bad progress. The only difference is that most 15-year-olds yet just play around. They don't try to structure their training properly. They don't take the time to do it properly. I just think I'm not unusually strong, I'm just unusually willing to get strong. I think a lot more people would have the chance. I think most people would actually be similarly strong if they put in the same effort as I have.
Oh yeah, if there's one thing about you that I know for sure is that you're unusually disciplined and matured for your age. That's definitely a thing that you're a bit of an outlier about. But yeah, I mean, we've seen a bunch of crazy strong 13, 14, 15-year-olds. Like, I think 2 years ago on Instagram, there was like that 13-year-old who benched 160 kilograms. And nowadays we have the ever so infamous Benjamin. Now, I think he hit 300 on the deadlift now at 16 in his recent competition. And he's benching 150 for 3 as well or something. Crazy kid. Natural too. Like, honestly, as a teenager, you guys are pretty much it's pretty much the perfect time for you guys to start lifting and training in general because you're still growing, your testosterone's through the roof and all that, and you can pretty much recover from anything, CNS wise as well because you're still young. But then the caveat is that you're still a teenager, and most of you teenagers are, like you said, just not willing to put in the time or the discipline to have proper training structure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Benjamin, he's an absolute outlier. The guy's a fantastic lifter at like world-class level soon enough, and that's no matter the age. I think being his weight and lifting 300 on deadlift, 150 on bench, all of these crazy numbers, that's just a respectable feat all around. But a lot of people, what I find to be difficult is lighter people who are young. It's kind of setting a limit to yourself. And a lot of people, they limit their weight and they only compare to people in their own age class and all of that just to feel good. And I think it's really destructive to look at yourself and say, oh, right, I'm 16 and I weigh as much as someone else's left leg only. And I lift these mediocre lifts, but I'm really good because nobody else who's 16 and who weighs this little is all that good at it. In the end, you're still lifting mediocre weights. It's not heavy. It's not something extremely out of the ordinary. And a lot of people, I know some friends who really look at themselves like that. They're in a country where not many people lift, so competition is low. Then they weigh nothing, so there are not many competitors, not many opponents who also lift at that low body weight. And then they're young in a young weight class. They end up saying, "Oh, well, I'm the best lifter," and they don't want to gain weight because then they'd be in a higher weight class and it'd be difficult. And they just end up limiting themselves, being a mediocre lifter for ages, just having weak lifts, being low in body weight, being small. They have to explain to people that they even lift in the first place. But yeah, I'm the best 13-year-old with 4 toes on my left foot, weighing 61.23 kilograms. And doing a sumo deadlift with 2-inch range of motion, and in the end they never even got strong. They're just limiting themselves to small standards. They're setting small standards for themselves.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty fair view. Although I'm pretty sure there's some people in the powerlifting community who would consider that a hot take, but I'm sure there's arguments for both sides. But I definitely see where you're coming from. Like, sure, in terms of competition, in terms of tournaments and winning, that yeah, doing something like that would be the best move if you want to win. But then again, like winning isn't always everything. Like how far you will, if that's how far you can go just to win, then why not go further? I mean, sure, you won't win in terms of competition, but as a personal thing, you've gone a lot further than you would have had if you just stayed in that whatever category you wanted just to win in that weight class or age class or whatever.
Yeah, for me, last year, had I competed as a 15-year-old, right before turning 16, I think I would have been over the national records in Germany, and I don't think that that's special. I would not have gone home saying, "Oh yeah, I'm Germany's best." I don't think that's the case. I think I'm just, in the end, if you look at it from an objective view, no matter what other people in Germany are doing, I'm still kind of a mediocre lifter. I don't have good lifts. They're kind of standard for everybody who's been training for 2-3 years. I don't look exceedingly big. I'm kind of just a teenager who likes to train, and you can tell I do it a little bit seriously, and that's about it. I don't consider myself Germany's best or a national level athlete or anything like that. And I think it's a bad view to look at yourself as that, instead of looking at yourself objectively and seeing how much higher the best are, how much better they are, and how much you still have to learn, how much you still can get stronger, and how much progress is still ahead of you.
Yeah, that's honestly pretty fair. It's like you're building a tall-ish, quote unquote, tall-ish building in a place where there are no tall buildings. So of course you'd be the tallest building, you'd be the best. But if you started trying to build a building in a place with a lot of tall buildings, you'll realize that you know what, there's actually a much higher ceiling that I need to build to be able to be competitive in that sort of environment. So I can personally I do agree with your sentiment on this. I think competing against people when you're at your very best is a lot better than competing against people when you're not at your very best but you're winning because simply because you happen to be better at that current level instead of pushing two people or three or more at their very best and seeing who can actually be better.
Yeah, and I think it's a nice thing with powerlifting that a lot of people kind of feel happy with themselves because there are these weight classes, there are tons of rules and different age classes and all of these brackets. But Alexander Bromley, he's a great coach and YouTuber who made this point. Basically, if you're lifting a 140 kilogram deadlift, it's a 140 kilogram deadlift. I believe anybody can achieve that within a year of training. It's not a big, heavy feat of strength. But then someone goes ahead and says, "Oh well, I only weigh 60 kilograms." Sure, it's a little bit harder for you, but in the end, it's still 140 kilograms. It's not a very heavy deadlift. And if you look at sprinting, this is the comparison Alex Bromley made, which I love. If you look at sprinting, you go ahead, you want to see the world's fastest sprinter. You want to see someone who's a good athlete, who perfects it. You don't go ahead, watch Usain Bolt run less than 10 seconds, and then see a hugely obese guy run 13 seconds and say, "Oh well, he's the better athlete because it's harder for him. He's super fat. I want to see the fat guy run. He's really good at it because he's so fat and he's still running 13 seconds. He's just the worst athlete. If he wanted to be a better athlete, he would work towards the body ideal you'd have to be a good athlete. And that's why also I don't think I'm a great powerlifter in the 83 class. I'm still a small child, a teenager basically. I have a lot to gain. I have a lot of weight to gain, and my lifts are not intensely impressive.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that is hilarious. I mean, seeing a fat guy run, like sub 30 seconds or whatever, at that point, honestly, it's more so comedy than it is watching someone for their athletic performance. So yeah, but I mean, it is a bit different in powerlifting, but yeah, I can see the comparisons between those weight classes and the comparison in running between someone who's actually athletic and built for running versus a fat guy who's just running good and calling him an athlete. Honestly, that is really good. I'm very glad you brought that up. Now, talking about all this, I actually want to bring this up, and I hope you don't mind, is injuries. I believe, and I'm sure some of the server members would know that you recently had a hernia operation. Can you tell us more about that, like from start to end?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it being a topic. Don't worry about that. My hernia. So, yeah. Usually, I think pain is something that just happens in training. It's okay to have pain once in a while, and for me, I always every now and then something hurt a little bit, and that's okay. You can work on it. It gets better. It gets worse at times, and that's fine. But with the hernia, so I had an umbilical hernia. It's in the abdominal wall. Basically, what it is, it's a hole in your abdominal wall, which is under the skin. It's inside of your body, and out of that hole, you can, for example, when you have a lot of abdominal pressure while bracing, while on the toilet or whatever you might be doing, your organs kind of, or your fat tissue gets pushed into the hole and gets pinched, and that can get dangerous. The hole can expand. It can lead to some organs being pinched or fat tissue being pinched and leading to some excruciating pain at times. And yeah, I had that. I first noticed something being up with my navel in the start of January. And yeah, right before I turned 16, I realized it was not getting any better. Every time I did something heavy, every time I did something, even just waking up, standing up from bed, doing a crunch motion, I felt a sharp, stinging pain in my navel. And yeah, I found out quickly that this is not normal pain. It's something where I can't do rest. It's not anything like soreness. It's something I'd never felt before, and that's what really scared me. And when I went to the doctor, they couldn't find out what it was. Then I went again, they still couldn't find out what I was. Then I went again, and they told me it was a hernia, but it was so small that it didn't require surgery. They told me to just let it be and come back when problems get intense.
Ugh.
And then I actually, yeah, a week later, problems were intense enough for me to come back. I remember actually vomiting at one point out of pain I had. And yeah, the doctor did tell me that this is extremely unusual. I'm a rare case. I had a very, very severe hernia for the size. It was extremely small, but caused so much pain, which was uncommon.
I guess it must have been like a really bad spot to get a hernia then.
Yeah, I mean, it is apparently a common spot, but something specific must have happened. And for example, some nerve got pinched, kept getting pinched because it was just, like perfectly situated for me to get pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, eventually I did get surgery on the 9th of February, and things went well. The surgery apparently went problem-free. It was a small hernia, not too much difficulty on the doctor's side. I couldn't go to school for a week. I couldn't properly walk. It took me some time to get back to life. But about 4 or 5 weeks, I felt good to train. And then, funnily enough, I started getting pains again. And I didn't know why. I went back to the doctor. He didn't know why. All he knew was something must be up, because it's uncommon to get pains again, worsening pain after 7-8 weeks. He thought it might have been a recurring hernia or a second one, which I thought at first. So I ended up getting a second surgery just what is it now, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, exactly 2 weeks ago. No, actually 13 days. And yeah, I got checked out. They found nothing specific, and all of my pain must be just nerves acting up, and yeah, just some recovery issues, which is fine. But I barely have problems with it currently, and my hernia is healed. And the special thing with the hernia, the abdominal wall hernia, is that it's not a common injury, in the sense that it doesn't really heal. When you have a cut or a wound in your skin, your body realizes, oh, bacteria is coming inside. I feel something's happening here. We have to fix this. But if the abdominal wall hernia, your body can't heal it. It doesn't realize something's happening. There's nothing different inside of your body. Your body doesn't have bacteria flooding in somewhere. It doesn't feel anything. So it doesn't know how to detect the hernia and fix it. So it was the first injury I've ever had, or the first pain I've ever had, which I couldn't fix myself. I couldn't let heal. I had to get surgery, and I was reliant on the surgeon to do his job well. And that's really what made it so difficult for me, because I felt like I had no control over it. That's also something I noticed in school, in the environment. Some people kept telling me, "Oh, it's your fault you're doing this because of your lifting." Which is entirely false. My doctor said it has nothing to do with it. I read up on studies. Lifting does not necessarily increase the risk of hernias.
Yep.
It's totally safe totally safe to lift for hernias.
Honestly, actually, having a weak abdominal muscles could actually contribute to developing a hernia for like normal average people. And even then, a lot of it could also just be genetic predisposition.
Yeah. For example, it's hard to know when a hernia actually occurred. Most people don't have like one sensation. It's a very, very small hole which continuously rips open a little bit more. And for me, what could be the case is that I actually had this from birth. It's a small defect, genetic defect that a lot of people have. I think about 30-40% of people, adults in their life, do get a hernia. It's usually an inguinal hernia, so not at the navel. And yeah, so it's really common. Could just be genetics, and my lifting kind of exacerbated the issue, maybe made it a little bit bigger, but it didn't cause it, that's for sure. That would be extremely non-logical, right? Because you're strengthening your abdominal muscles, you're doing everything opposite of causing a hernia. You're protecting the tissue right there.
Yep. Especially since it knows how to brace for movements and everything like that, it should actually just strengthen it. Although there's some studies saying that the tightening and the strengthening of the abdominal muscles could contribute to actually causing a hernia because it's not relaxed. So say if a pull or some sort of pressure comes in from a very awkward angle that due to your abdominals being strengthened, it could actually just cause the tension to cause the hernia itself. Though it's not that strong, if I recall correctly. I mean, there's so many factors in hernias that honestly just blaming it on just lifting is pretty stupid, straight up.
Yeah, there are some definite factors I've found which seem to be agreed upon to be hard evidence for causing or increasing the risk of getting a hernia, which seem to be, for example, obesity, smoking, just general health issues like that, genetic predisposition if your family has a large history of hernias. And yeah, that's basically the main stuff. And lifting, it's not really agreed upon whether it's dangerous or not. And I don't think it should be a reason for anybody not to lift heavy just because they might get a hernia. Usually, I'm a rare case. And even for me, it's been 2-3 months. I'm totally back to life. I don't think I will ever think about this hernia in my life again. I think it's gone. It's a gone issue. And it cost me nothing. It didn't hurt me that much. It's fine. It was a tough time for a couple of months, and that's it. I'm back to lifting heavy again. I have no issues currently. And for most people, it's even better. I think Alan Thrall, he had a hernia. He trained with it for a year. He had no issues. He got surgery in 2 weeks after he was back to training. It's not a necessarily big or dangerous, harmful thing, especially when you're young and you have so much ability to recover. You can handle so much. Your body is so healthy from lifting and being healthy in general.
Oh yeah, definitely take advantage of that. That being said, like Just because you can take advantage of being injured and recovering, please don't go out there and get injured. To anyone who's going to listen to this episode, please be smart. Like, even simple, this isn't something you ask for, whatever. This is just a very rare case. You're likely not going to get injured, provided that you do live smart and you don't do anything stupid like ego lifting or keep doing exercises that you are not comfortable with. Yeah, so as long as you're smart, you should be injury free.
Yeah, I think the whole concept of injury is very misunderstood in the lifting community in general. One of the worst things I think about social media is the nocebo, the fear that's induced in people. One thing I constantly see is someone does a deadlift, they do a squat, they do anything, just some movement, and they have a little bit of backgrounding, and all of a sudden everybody is automatically in the comments saying, "Oh yeah, this is dangerous. You're gonna break your back. You will die. You will get a herniated disc. You will suffer death." It's just totally extreme, and there's no reasoning behind it. I mean, pain is what most people, when they have pain in their back, they think I'm injured. That's what happens to most people when they do deadlifts, when they do training. They immediately think that they're injured. Pain is extremely multifactorial. Sorry, I can't speak properly. So pain is extremely multifactorial. There's no one cause for pain. Just because you have a little bit of pain in your back does not mean you're injured. There are tons of things that happen with pain. For example, someone is not adapted to movement. They have never done deadlifts before, and now they're going to go to the gym and they will deadlift heavy for the first time. What might happen is their body will give a bit of a signal in the back, which is experienced as pain, to tell you to not do the movement this heavy right now because it's not adapted. It's looking for protection of the tissues. That's one of the main things why pain happens, one of the main reasons. It's not necessarily dangerous. Body just says, stop it. Take a break. Now, you do that with two people. You tell them to go to the gym, and you tell one of them, you're going to have back pain. This will hurt you. You will get injured. It's extremely dangerous to do deadlifts. And you will most likely herniate a disc. You will most likely suffer extreme pain in your spinal region. And you tell the other person, oh yeah, deadlifts are fine. You're going to strengthen your spine. You will feel fantastic. Your spine will get healthy because it's going to be going through so much movement. It's going to do a lot of work. It will be healthy. It will adapt to the stress that it's being put under. And you will see that the first athlete who you scare, who you fear, you induce a fear of movement into them, they're going to experience worse pain. This has been proven time and time again in studies. There are studies where this is done. The nocebo effect is just as strong as the placebo effect. Telling people something bad will happen will increase the likelihood of it happening. The people experience pain not because they're injured, it's a part of pain, but it's multifactorial. They experience pain also just because they're told they will experience pain, or because they're scared of having pain. And that's extremely dangerous of social media, where people constantly say this is dangerous and that is dangerous. Meanwhile, it's been proven that the body, it is extremely adaptable. It can adapt to any movement, and there's no movement that's inherently dangerous. The whole point of lifting is to apply stress to the body. There's no point in not applying stress or avoiding stress when that's the entire point of moving. Yeah, I think that's something that's really misunderstood in lifting. What's your take?
I think your take was perfectly as understandable, and honestly, ironically too, with the whole world situation, people have also not been able to apply that same concept to vaccines. I mean, how are you supposed to be, or how are you supposed to build immunity towards something if you don't get exposed to it? It's the exact same thing. That's why actually I learned recently that the likelihood of a child developing allergies or hypersensitivity towards a certain stimulus it can also be partly correlated to the fact that they live or they grew up in a very sterile environment. Doctors have actually started realizing that having children grow up in a very sterile environment has actually caused them to develop more allergies or hypersensitivities that they wouldn't have developed despite their susceptibility to developing these hypersensitivities. So yeah, if you get exposed to certain conditions or diseases more, not too serious, but like enough so that your body can learn what it is and get used to it and develop immunity to it, then yeah, you develop immunity towards a certain bacteria or certain virus. The same exact way you develop strength and weight training. Sure, it might hurt now, or because you're not so used to it, so your body gives you the signal of pain. But then, as you develop, you get stronger and stronger. You get more used to these movements or these weights, these intensities, these volumes. The likelihood of you getting injured is very, very low. Usually, these freak injuries are 1 in a million, and usually they're also largely due to something very stupid that the person themselves committed.
Yeah, a lot of people really owe their pain a bit to themselves and just being a bit of an idiot using a barbell or the weights. Yeah, and the adaptability is really something that makes us human different to other things, to machines. We are not machines. If you take a look at, for example, back when Europeans first came to America, the indigenous people, they had a lot of trouble with the diseases we brought, and the whole tribes died because of them, simply because they were not adapted to them. Their body did not adapt to these diseases. They didn't grow up with them. They never evolved or learned to deal with them, and so they had terrible results from it. If you look at studies that show back pain, the likelihood of back pain, you see it's usually lower in athletes because they're used to having stress on their body. They're used to putting stress on their body. People occasionally come up to me and tell me, "Oh yeah, these squats are terrible for your knees. I even have pain when I just do one without a barbell," and that kind of makes me laugh because there's a reason they have pain even without a barbell. There's a reason they can load up half my weight and it still hurts their knees. It's because their body has not adapted to the stress it's being put under.
Yeah.
They're just not used to what's happening. Their body has not learned to take that yet. And yeah, I think the adaptability really is what's happening, what's causing people these issues, these pains, these injuries. It's rare to see an injury which isn't caused by just, well, not being adapted yet. And load management is one of the key things to stopping that. If you have pain, one of the main procedures should be to lower the weight, to find a set point, something that is inducing such little stress that you can do it without getting injured. So for example, if 100 kilos on squats hurts you and your knees hurt, try to find out what doesn't hurt. If 40 kilograms doesn't hurt, that's a good set point. Start with 40 kilograms, work your way up. That's how strong you are now. You're no longer a 100 kg squatter. You do 40 until you can do more without pain and your tissues have adapted to it. And that should be one of the procedures. And it's something that's highly misunderstood. People just fully ignore this. They think they are not adaptable. They are now injured. They need full rest because they had a little bit of pain. It's crazy to me. So I tell someone, I woke up, my back hurts a bit. And they say, yeah, you gotta stop it with all the lifting. It's dangerous. I don't understand where even the logic behind it comes from. We are not fixed machines which don't adapt. If I have pain, I might not have pain tomorrow because my body heals, it recovers, it adapts to the stress, it gets used to it. It's like the most of the back pain, the trouble, the fear of it comes from that one study they did back in the day where they took dead pig spines and put them under flexion.
Yeah.
And then said, it hurts the spines. Yeah, well, because it's a broken spine. You can't bend a pen and hope it doesn't break. It will break eventually. The pen doesn't recover, but you're not a pen. You're not a dead pig spine. You're a living object. You're a living thing, not an object. A thing. You live. You're an animal.
Yeah,
and I
actually,
think that's what makes us different. Yeah.
yeah, actually, even McGill has elaborated on his findings because if I remember correctly, the research that you were talking about was done by Dr. Stuart McGill, and even Stuart McGill himself has expanded upon that finding to clarify that yes, the study itself was actually pretty bad because again, it was done on dead pig spines for I believe they were reverse hyperextensions for thousands and thousands of reps non-stop without any break. And I mean, the study itself was very,
Yeah. Yeah.
very badly done. Like this isn't some mouse where you want to try and check how much
Yeah.
clicks you have until it wears out. And he
Yeah.
himself has expanded on that. Yeah, that study was really bad, and you probably shouldn't take that to heart or even take that study at all as any form of hard truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to me that even the man himself said it, and it's still being used as bias as basis, and then on top of that, sure. Even if we took that study and said, yeah, spinal flexion is bad, then take a look at what actually happens during a squat or a deadlift. It's unavoidable to have spinal flexion and spinal movement. It's unavoidable. Even if you think your back is being kept straight because you're moving the hips, it will not be straight. It will automatically move. It's anatomically impossible to do a squat or a deadlift without moving your spine. You have to flex it. You have to bend the spine. That's what always happens. And sure, if you don't round, if you don't get crazy rounding and butt wink or whatever you may call it, you will still get flexion. You will still get movement in the spine. To a significant extent, it's unavoidable. And if you say, oh well, straight spine deadlifts are fine, then so are rounded spine deadlifts. They just have a different degree of flexion, and that's it. It's a different amount of stress you're putting, but you're applying stress either way to your spine
Yep,
and the surrounding tissues.
and obviously, different positions, different tissues used in different ways. They all have different how do I say this? Different amounts of load or stress that they can adapt to at any given time. So that has to be taken into consideration. Like maybe doing high bar squats is very stressful for you, so you can't do them too often. But you're very good at low bar squats, so you can squat more often with low bar squat, and vice versa. Different movements, different techniques. They have different thresholds for stress. Yeah, that's the term. Thresholds for stress, and you need to find that out on yourself and understand how to work around that. But the exercises themselves generally are pretty much fine. And actually, talk about all the stress and mental approach to it. I'm curious, how was your mental approach or mental situation during the whole hernia thing? Because again, you did mention that nocebo is a very real thing that people experience. So how was it with you with the hernia? How was your mental state when you first realized that you had a condition that you needed surgery for? How was your mental state when you went for the surgery, and how was it when you were recovering and getting back to where you are now?
Oh well, for one, it was pretty terrible. You have a hernia, and it's one of the rare injuries where you know it's not going to get better until you get surgery. It's if I had a little bit of back pain, that's okay. I just sleep a good night. I eat a lot of food, go to McDonald's and binge everything. It's gonna be fine in a couple of days or weeks or something. You just see a gradual progression in how little pain there is, and it gets even better with time. But with the hernia, it's just you need the surgery and you need to pray that it works. That's about it. You can't do much about it. And that's kind of what scared me. Especially when at first it was getting worse and worse, and I stopped training and it still kept getting worse. And then when I did get my surgery, it was getting better. I felt great. And then it got worse again, and I knew that it was out of my control. That's what made it so difficult for me. And I was really scared of being haunted basically with the hernia, just have it come back and need a second surgery, another couple months of training, and again. But at the same time, I knew that nobody, at least in lifting, or nobody has died from a small hernia, and eventually I'm going to get back to movement. That's what I kept reminding myself. I know no lifter who had a hernia 6 years ago, for example, and can't lift because of it. they get over it. Eventually, it heals, or it doesn't heal, but it gets fixed, it gets repaired. You're safe, you're back to training. And that's what I had to keep reminding myself. There were tough days, but I knew that eventually, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I was not going to have any issues. And yeah, that's really what inspired me to just keep it up, stay positive, remind myself it's fine. All it is just a small hole in my abdominal wall, and yeah, I'll be good eventually.
So you really had a long-term mindset approach to this whole thing, like for injury and rehab, and which is great. But how do you think would you convey that sort of mindset to other people? Because like some people in the server do get injuries as well. I believe one of the more notable members, like that's recently quote unquote hurt his back. Well, not quote unquote, he did hurt his back, and a few other members also occasionally come in with injuries. How would you? Any advice do you give to them to have this sort of long-term mindset in regards to injury and rehab?
Okay, there's one comparison I do like to make. I know we're not mechanical objects, so it's hard to compare, but I think it still gets a point across. If you have your car, for example, and you get a flat tire, you may not be able to ride your car. You may not be able to go grocery shopping for a while. And you might have to get it fixed, and you need to maybe buy a new tire. It takes some time to change it as well. You have to do some work. But you're going to get it fixed eventually. I don't think anybody is going to throw away their car unless they total it. Sure, if you jump out of a plane, you might not get back to training anytime soon. But that's probably not what's happening. You're just getting a small error, something small, some small issue, which you might have to fix, which might take some time. But you're going to be good eventually. And you have to fix it through movement and rehabbing. Everything we know in literature, which isn't on dead pig spines, we know that movement is the key. Movement is therapy, and movement will get you back to movement. If you have knee pain and you start moving your knee a light bit and a little bit more and a little bit more, apply a little bit more stress, you will eventually adapt back to your peak performance without having knee pain. And I think long term, it's just really nice. It's really calming to know that there's a fix to everything. Nothing you're stuck with for eternity. One comparison, which I like is if you go to a doctor and they tell you your knee, you tell them your knee hurts, and they say, well, stop squatting. It's stupid, and it's a shitty doctor. Just the way it would be a shitty mechanic if you went to the mechanic and said, yeah, my car, it blows smoke, the engine is fuming every time I turn it on, and he just tells you, yeah, never turn the car back on again, go back home. It's no longer a functional car. They're supposed to fix the issue. They're supposed to do something to make it work again, and that's the nice thing for our body, because it's adaptable on its own. You don't even need a doctor most of the time. You don't even need someone to fix you. You can just adapt. Your body fixes itself with most things.
Oh yeah, definitely with most training things, but not that. Just to be clear, Tim isn't saying that you shouldn't see a doctor at all, but rather be smart about whenever you make an appointment. Like if it's just some training related stuff, maybe some soreness or something feels funky, it's probably not a serious issue unless it continues and starts becoming worse. Either it starts becoming worse or it starts to continue. Otherwise, you can probably just deal with it on your own. Now, if it's some kind of viral sickness, then please do see a doctor. That's not what Tim is saying at all. He's just saying that if it's regarding to training, you can probably deal with it on your own if you were smart about it. Just putting that out there.
For sure. To expand on that, if you have training-related injury of movement pain or something, I think it's often really, really good to listen to a sports-specific physiotherapist instead of your general doctor, or maybe get multiple opinions, because, as I'm saying, this is a new topic, or this is not really that well understood by everyone, and there are even some doctors who still believe that spinal flexion is dangerous, for example, and it's often good to get a second opinion. And if someone tells you just to never do something again, then that's where I really recommend you to get a second opinion, because I fully believe that we are not machines which break. We are adaptable.
Oh yeah, and bringing up two examples that you and I both know is knees over toes guys and Candido. Now, for those of you who don't know, knees over toes guy, he did gain some popularity and became viral a bit a while back. I think late last year or so. But basically, the guy does some really crazy stuff with his knees and knee flexion that you wouldn't normally see in the fitness space. But his background is that he had a, I don't remember if it was a condition or an injury, but basically his doctors told him that yeah, his knee is completely screwed. He'll never be able to like squat or do stuff much again, which he stubbornly didn't listen to, and he started doing his own research on how the body works and how the knee mechanics work. And now, as you can see on his YouTube channel, Knees Over Toes guys can do a lot of knee flexion with zero pain at all, stuff that people before would have never even imagined were capable with zero pain. At least most people would think that. And also Candido, Johnny Candido, the ever so loved powerlifter, one of the goats. Around last year, January, I believe, he tore his hamstring right off. It's right off its insertion because of an injury during one of his beats on sumo deadlift. And guess what? The guy was back to squatting 4 plates in about a month, just because he looked up the current research. He did his research. He looked up the current studies, the findings, and everything, and then he did the proper rehab that the research found was pretty good. He did it consistently every day, and he went from literally tearing his hamstring off to being able to squat 4 plates again in about a month and a month and a half. So yeah, like Tim is saying, your body is pretty damn incredible.
Yeah, the body really knows how to fix itself with a lot of things, and one of the two main things, not just one, the two main things which I think people should watch out when they have pain is observe and react with your training. Most of the time when people do get pain or a little bit of injury, or they're rehabbing even, what needs to be the case is that the stress you apply is less than what you're recovering from. If you apply more stress to your knees, to your back, to your whatever, then you are able to recover from, the issue will get worse, or you will end up eventually damaging tissues more. If it's the other way around, you will end up healing. That's how it works in most of the cases. So you need to find a set point where you're mostly pain-free and work up from there. And then the second thing is just your mindset. As I explained earlier, social media does in part have a really bad influence on people and their pain levels, just because these are psychosocial factors which really factor into pain. If you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm injured, I have a terrible injury, this will be so painful, then you will actually experience more pain. So you need to watch out not to delve a bit too deep into that, and to keep telling yourself you will eventually be fine, you are adaptable. If you just make sure your training and your overall life structure is fine at the moment.
Oh, totally. And this is actually a pretty good transition since, as we mentioned earlier, you do write some programs for some members in the server, do a bit of programming for yourself and them. So, how would you bring that approach to say programming to a normal healthy person, to adjusting your program or auto regulation to when you're injured? Maybe tell us a bit about that.
Okay, one example for me would be the bench press. Right? It's not something I've had, but something I've helped some people on the server with. If you're, for example, you have a little bit of shoulder pain on your bench press, two things I would do is, one, you know that the bench press hurts your shoulders if you do it heavy enough, and you would like to get back to benching eventually. So you want to find a weight, a load, something on bench press which lets you bench press with your desired range of motion, your desired technique, which you always use, but pain-free. If that's just the empty barbell, that's fine. Do as little as you need to do, even if it's just a stick, even if you're just going through the motions. You warm up properly and you get your shoulders slowly used to the movement. That's fantastic. And then a second thing you want to do is now you're doing this really light bench press. You're no longer using a heavy 80, 90, 100 kilograms. You want to find a way to replace that volume for your chest, your triceps, and your shoulders potentially. So find exercises which let you replace without adding too much stress to your shoulders. This really depends on what works for you, how your injury is, what it's actually coming from. For example, if you always have shoulder pain, what should be fine for your chest is chest flies. Probably don't have a lot of stress on your shoulders doing those. If those work fine, then that's great. You can use that to replace your chest volume. You can do tricep push downs to replace your tricep volume to still get some good stimulus, get stronger at the same time. And for your shoulders, find some movements that work. Maybe face pulls are good. Whatever it may be, you want to find solutions, something that doesn't hurt, and then at the same time, you want to slowly adapt to the movement which you are getting pain from. You don't want to cut it out entirely. I don't think that's a good choice of programming. Then another thing, this is where you may not be able to help yourself. This is where a physiotherapist or someone with more extensive anatomical understanding could help you. Is maybe find out where the problem's coming from. Something common in bench press is that people have problems with their rotator cuffs. Maybe these are weak, maybe these are getting pinched. You have a little bit of shoulder impingement happening potentially. And some training of the delts, the rotator cuffs through face pulls may be beneficial. But this is something that isn't really easy to diagnose. You need to understand how the entire structures work, and especially the shoulders, the hips, the knees, the joints, which are really often injured or often painful or anatomically difficult to understand, and people may have misunderstanding, and that's exactly where physiotherapists may be able to help you a little bit more. I personally, I've had some squat pain and deadlift pain around the hip, around the lower back. And just recently I found out that it might actually be my piriformis muscle which is causing the issue, just because it's tight, it's weak from my posture, from the way I sit all day. And that actually helps me, stretching it, strengthening it a bit through some motions, that helps me deal with the pain, and now I'm basically pain-free, no longer hip and lower back pain. And I think back in the day, I used to think this was just lower back pain. It doesn't seem like it was. It's just something that's happening at the top of the glute in the hip. And yeah, that's basically my procedure for rehabbing, for fixing your issues, and dealing with injuries.
Oh yeah, totally. Like definitely this hence why seeing an actual sports physiotherapist or anyone who specializes in lifting or sports injuries is tons way better than seeing your general practitioner, because there's a bunch of nuances in lifting and exercising that can cause a bunch of different things, and some of them might even cascade from each other. Like we have upper cost syndrome, lower cost syndrome, and a bunch of other stuff that you need a professional eye, because you likely don't have the knowledge yourself. And even if you were to self study it, it still takes a bit of background to properly understand these conditions for you to properly treat them yourself. So in times like this, seeing a professional could be better. But if you can find something that works for you, then by all means, go for it, man. Like if you can heal it yourself, then you can heal it yourself, and you can learn a bunch of other things as well as you proceed with that.
Yeah, and two things I'd also mention is general practitioners, their general goal is usually just to limit the patient's suffering, their pain, just to limit the issues they are having. So, sure, you're not going to have pain from bench pressing if you just stop benching altogether. But it's not really fixing the issue, you're just fixing or masking the pain by just not doing it anymore, the movement. And a physiotherapist, on the other hand, their goal would usually be to get you to be able to move properly again without pain. So the goals are often a bit different. I'm not saying either one is bad. I'm not saying either one is necessarily better than the other. But if your goal is to move, then physiotherapy might be a bit better for you. And rehabbing yourself or rehabbing with the help of a specialist is really a good choice. And then another thing I want to mention is you don't have to feel forced to do what people want you to do. If you always have difficulties in your shoulders doing a bench press, a normal bench press, or an incline bench press, for example. You always have difficulties in your shoulders whenever you do an incline bench press. And sure, you can do it light enough to where your shoulders slowly adapt, but if that's going to take you ages, just months, just to be able to slowly be able to incline bench press heavy enough to actually get good chest, shoulder, and tricep volume and stimulus, then that might just not be the best choice. And maybe if someone tells you to incline bench press, maybe switch out the barbell for dumbbells. If that feels better for you, go ahead. If you feel better doing a bit of a chest press or weighted incline push-up, whatever it may be, or decline push-up, if you find something that works alternatively, that's also a decent choice. It always depends on what your goal is. Obviously, a powerlifter isn't going to run away from deadlifts just because they hurt a bit. You need to be able to deadlift to be a powerlifter. If you're training just for general strength and general hypertrophy, it's fine to switch out things every now and then just to get a solution to your training issues to still be able to progress without having to deal with these joint issues. I remember Ice on the other podcast episode. He talked a lot about this with his blood flow restriction training and all of the things he uses. Yeah, I think preacher curls are awful for him. I've seen him complain about preacher curls a couple of times on the Discord as well. He doesn't like them. He doesn't like them, and they don't like him. That's fine. He could adapt. Maybe if he went really light and took a lot of time, I'm sure he would potentially get better at them, but I don't necessarily see a point either.
Yeah, especially depending on your goals and your trade-offs. Like sometimes it's not worth it, and you can just abandon the exercise entirely, as long as the exercise itself isn't compulsory, like in powerlifting or strongman or weightlifting. Then you have honestly probably hundreds of exercise variations to achieve the same hypertrophy or strength goals that you could swap out.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many options, and I don't think you have to miss out on any of them, and I don't think you're forced to do any of them necessarily. One thing I think is important is to always try to find a solution for whatever issue you might have, or try to find what's working for whatever goal you might have. People conform to normal ideas, and they end up using normal training programs, kind of running away from their goals. Sure, a general strength training program is fine, and it's definitely a good choice. You will probably make progress on it. You will get stronger, you will get bigger. But if your main goal right now is just to have bigger arms, for example, and you're really set on that, then these programs may not be the best for you. Or if your goal is to get the biggest chest possible, but you always get pain bench pressing, so you have to do it really light, then maybe these programming choices are also not the best for you. And you always need to find what are your capabilities? What can you do? What do you have the equipment for doing? Get creative and find out what do you actually want to do? What do you want to achieve? And then you have to make programming decisions to match that. Something I really dislike is how in your common programs, for example, your push-pull leg split, on a pull day you have them doing deadlifts, then you have them doing rows, you have them doing a chin-up, you have them doing a lighter cable roll, and only then do they actually get to biceps. By that point, they've been training for 2 hours, they're super fatigued, they're sweating like hell, just totally done with it. Their biceps are already fatigued from all of the work they've done before that, and I don't think any of their bicep curl sets will be all that good. They will not have peak performance. They will be fully out of it. Their elbows might be feeling funky, whatever. It's just not a great time to think you're going to get great bicep stimulus. And one of my favorite things, which I've been doing, because I have not had good arm growth, my biceps and my triceps are some of my worst body parts. They just do not want to grow. One of the things I've been doing is I've been doing curls at the start of a push day. That way, I'm totally fresh into the session. I'm not fatigued at all. I haven't worked out at all. And my bicep curling, it fatigues my bicep, but that doesn't matter if all I'm doing after that is bench press, for example. Or the other way around, you can also do tricep pushdowns on a pull day or leg day. And now, sure, these are training considerations which people may find weird, You may also choose to do an entire arm day, just a day dedicated to training your arms and actually get them to grow. People may find you weird. They're going to say that's overkill. It's such a small muscle, but who are they to say that? If your goal is actually to train your arms to get bigger arms, and this is how you get the best performance on them, the best progress, the best stimulus, then I'm all for it. I'm all for not conforming to what people believe is the best. I'm for finding a solution to your training goals and something that works.
Oh, totally. Especially, well, just a disclaimer again. This is considering that you have a solid base already. Like Simple has, he already has a solid base, so he can make these considerations. This is not an excuse for you beginners out there who just started training a weekend and you want to completely skip out on your compounds just so they can hit arms to get big arms. As this is not an excuse. This is there's a considerations that you can have once you have a solid base and you find that maybe you might have some body parts that are lacking and you're making some programming considerations to bring up those body parts. And actually, speaking of programming structure, as someone who came in from calisthenics into free weights, would you say there was any programming difference between body weight and weights? And how would you say, because we do sometimes get people who want to have a mix of both, how would you structure that? Say if you just strictly calisthenics or strictly weights and then mixing them together in a program structure?
Mixing them together again, it does depend on what exactly your goal is. If you're, it really does depend on that. If you all you want is to get huge, you want great bodybuilding gains, and you want exceedingly large arms, which wouldn't be needed for powerlifting, for example, then you can do that. And if you want to then mix that with calisthenics, and by calisthenics you mean just doing bodyweight exercises, then sure, go ahead. You can do you can do ring rolls to failure, for example, at high reps. You can do pull-ups, you can do dips, all of these movements for hypertrophy. I would say a movement necessarily doesn't dictate the goal. How you structure and how you plan that movement, how you train it, that really changes the outcome. So you can totally mix them. It just depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to do skill training with bodybuilding or powerlifting together, I recommend you take an extra day out of your week and you structure that mostly around your skills. You do a bit of planche work, you do a bit of front lever training or whatever it may be that you want to achieve. And then also on each one of your training days, you can do a little bit of something first. So when you're less fatigued, on your push day, for example, or your upper or whatever workout it might be, you can just start out the workout, take 10 minutes, practice your handstands. It's going to be great. You're going to be training a skill, every skill twice a week. If you do just something on one training day and a skill day together. And then you're also going to be training a little bit of skills every single day. Now, that's one way I like to combine skills with weight or lift or bodybuilding training. Then another thing is if you just want to get strong at weighted pull-ups and dips, that's something I find really, really nice to do. The pull-ups, you can basically just cut down on your rowing and let pull on or whatever back volume you might have and just add them. Because generally, if you're doing squat, bench, deadlift a lot, your back and your biceps, they will not be fatigued as much. So you can just add pull-ups. You can do them heavy on one day. You can do 2 lighter days, one maybe for volume, maybe one with a variation like banded, pause, whatever it may be, to iron out some weak points you might have during the pull-up. Maybe a different grip, something wider, a chin up instead of a pull-up. Just to do some variation. That's a way you can really do the pull-ups. And for dips, it depends on if you want to do bench press more, if you want to do dips more. You can just choose the variation, whichever gives you more hypertrophy, which gives you more stimulus, which feels better on your joints, just something that feels really good, which you feel like you can do all day. And then do a bit more of that and a bit less of the other one. And as long as you're training bench and dips at least once a week, you're really going to get good progress on them because the carryover is immense. It's rare to see someone have a good dip but a really bad bench or the other way around. If we look at Matthew Zlat, for example, he's a lifter, a street workout lifter, someone who does weighted pull-ups and dips. His best dip is, what is it, 195 kilograms.
Yeah, 195
If you,
kilogram at 100 kilogram body weight, which is effectively
yeah,
295 kilograms.
yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. And then if you look at his bench press, I think it was one time where he had never like benched before. He just tried it out for fun. He did 200 kilograms. And then he trained for a couple of months at it, just did it a bit every now and then, once a week, and his bench is now like 220 or something absolutely ridiculous for someone who doesn't bench necessarily. So yeah, that's one way you can combine them for powerlifting. And for bodybuilding, to be fair, it's really calisthenics is just it works fantastic for bodybuilding. You can just choose whichever exercise you want to do, which feels good. I, for one, even though I don't have large calisthenic ambitions, even though I'm not chasing big calisthenics numbers currently. I just do bodybuilding, I just do powerlifting and a bit of trying to get big at the same time. I do ring rolls all the time. They're still by far my favorite back movement.
Oh yeah,
Currently, my favorite roll.
ring are like insanely good SFR, like bang for your buck. You can just go to failure on them almost every time. Zero fatigue on the zero systemic fatigue, zero fatigue on the lower back. Great back pump. You feel huge. It's honestly great. The only really caveat is that it's kind of hard to add weight if you don't have like a good setup for it.
Yeah, but to be fair, I've been feeling pretty good on them. I've been just using a dip belt and hanging it straight off my between my legs. It works great for me. I have a bit of an elevated setup with my feet up on a chair and the rings kind of high, so I have some space between me and the floor, and it's not really uncomfortable to just have a plate hanging in front of me or between my legs. It's fine. I just set it up with the dip belt, and I can load. I think the heaviest I've done was 30 kilograms for I don't know how many reps. They were not really touching the chest, full range of motion, but still, I don't think it's too uncomfortable. It's fine. And the exercise itself, it just makes it so worth it. Because with all the squatting and deadlifting I do, I don't really want to spend that much lower back recovery on doing barbell rolls. It's just, I prefer doing a bit of ring rowing all the time for my back. It feels fantastic.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can totally relate. I love them as well. Whenever I do put them into my training. So, but what we can take from this at least is that unless you're in a certain sport where certain exercises have to be inside the programming, or at least for the most part, what we can take away from this is that the way you program your exercise selection, your intensity, volume, and how you structure it all is going to be entirely goal dependent. And honestly, for bodybuilders, they have the most freedom because their only goal is hypertrophy. So they have complete freedom in when it comes to exercise selection. While others may be limited in their exercise selection, just understand that ultimately, in a way, sure, it's not always correlated for everyone. Like there are, like Tim said, it's very rare to find people who are really good at dips but bad at bench press and vice versa. It might be rare, but there are people who are actually like that. But long term, like really, really long term, and in the end, strength is strength. If you're strong, then you're strong. Even though you might not be as strong as you could be on a certain exercise, if you're strong on an exercise that's somewhat similar, you'll probably be strong in that other exercise that's also somewhat similar. Strength is strength in the end. Though it's not always the case, but you guys get the idea. Hopefully.
Yeah, another thing I like to add to that is strength is really a bit subjective.
Oh, definitely.
Because yeah. For example, we all know those guys. They're tiny, but they have an incredible deadlift, for example. And it just makes no sense that someone so small, so much smaller than another guy, can deadlift so much more. But if you end up looking at the leverages and kind of seeing how it all, how the deadlifts compare, someone has the hips way closer to the bar, maybe they've got a wider stance, maybe they're even doing sumo instead of conventional deadlifts, maybe they have really long arms, not lifting the barbell very far distance, and they start very upright. They've got great technique. Then all of a sudden, it kind of makes sense why these people can
lift more weight without being as big or as strong looking, if you want to call it that. It's often not a lot of magic going into it, and it's why I like to compare tons of different movements. If you look at strongmen, usually the guys winning are insanely big. They're some of the bigger guys. Sure, they may lose at some events. Maybe some guy who's short and freakishly good leveraged for the deadlift, they may win that event, but that's about it. And I think the same thing applies to strength training. If you see someone who has, they have a 100-kilogram dip, they have a 150-kilogram bench press, they have a 60-kilogram pull-up or 80-kilogram pull-up, and they have all of these crazy numbers across the board and everything, they're usually going to be big. They're usually
Oh,
going to be
definitely.
generally strong. They're going to be decent at anything they do. They do arm wrestling, they're going to be decent. They do a different pressing movement, they're going to be decent. And that's really just depends on what your goals are. Sure, if your goal is just to have a good powerlifting bench press, then you can go ahead and do only powerlifting bench press with crazy wide grip, super high arch, and not a lot of range of motion, and you're going to make the movement easy, basically. But yeah, then you're going to get good at powerlifting bench press. You'll be strong at that movement specifically. So it just kind of depends on what do you want to get strong at? What do you think is strong? What is impressive? What do you care about? Sure, that it's all just up to you, up to the individual in the end.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. Like if you're in that sport, then the only lifts you care about are those three lifts. If you're weightlifting, then the only thing you care about is clean and jerk and snatch. You don't care if someone can dip to 150 kilograms. It doesn't matter to you. But objectively, I think we can all agree that in terms of objectiveness, how strong you are across the board on multiple different lifts like dips, pull-ups, SBD, overhead press, some strongman movements, clean and jerk, weightlifting. Like if you're strong across the board, then I think everyone can agree that you are objectively strong because you're just putting out good numbers across the board. And I think this is a pretty good way to talk about philosophy when it comes to training. Because from what I've come to understand, Tim, you have a pretty, I'd say, holistic approach or holistic philosophy when it comes to training. And you always think about coming up ways to do something or to achieve a goal. And you never want to bottle yourself up in like a certain aspect of training and just kind of want to do it all if at all possible. So maybe talk more. Do you want to talk more about that? Your like personal philosophy to training and how you think people should approach training and fitness in general?
Yeah, for me, well, how people should approach fitness and training in general, it's up to them. It's totally up to them. But my view personally is, even just when I started, what mattered to me was I didn't want to be the weak kid. I wanted to be the kid who was athletic, who had something to show for, something that he could actually perform in front of others. And because it was the total opposite of that, and I didn't want to be that anymore. So I started training, and all I just wanted to just do was do a couple push-ups, and yeah, because I thought that was an impressive feat of strength. I thought that was cool. And then now over time, I moved into weighted calisthenics, and I wanted to get good at that. And now I'm doing powerlifting, and on the side a little bit of arm wrestling. I also do bodybuilding training. I like to do a bit of everything because I don't find it enjoyable to be bad at some things specifically. I don't think I didn't want to. I couldn't be properly proud of myself knowing I deadlift, for example, 200, but then go to school and then some random guy who doesn't even train beats me at arm wrestling. It's not something I was necessarily proud of. I wanted to be a good, strong athlete all around the board and a bit of everything. So I started doing arm wrestling training a bit. I had weak wrists. They always hurt on bicep curls, and I couldn't get good biceps because of that. So I started training my wrists, doing arm wrestling movements, and then I started training my biceps more. And now I'm realizing, oh well, these sumo deadlifts, they're short range of motion, super heavy weight, low reps, not really getting my hamstrings any bigger, so or not optimally getting them bigger. So I started training deficit conventional deadlifts currently, or doing more Nordic curls and all of that stuff. And I just think it's fun to be a little bit good at everything at least. And I think it's also good to be a well-rounded athlete. If you only ever limit yourself to one thing, it's gonna be hard to get better eventually. If you only have a bench press and your triceps just seem to stay weak and they're just not going through all that range of motion. You don't bend your elbow much when deadlifting. It's all in the chest. It's all in the wide grip, then maybe your bench press is not growing optimally. Maybe you're just not getting those big arms that you desired when you first started lifting. Maybe you're not getting all of these goals you could be getting. So doing a bit more triceps work could be fun. Maybe getting better at close grip bench would help your overall pressing strength, and maybe you'd get a good weighted dip at the same time. It's just I don't really like limiting myself to a short spectrum of things. I still love powerlifting. I don't think I'm going to stop that anytime soon, and I'm still gonna do my sumo deadlift super heavy with all of the powerlifting rules, but I also like to get good at hip hinges. I also like to get good at moving my body in a flow pull motion. And that's how I think about most things, most movements.
Yeah, I can totally agree on that, because it's been the same for me as well. Like the idea that, say that you're really strong in a certain aspect, and then you can completely lose in another aspect to someone else who just so happens to train that thing a bit more than you do, or maybe you don't even train that aspect, and you just lose just like that. It's very humbling for one, but it's also kind of like you feel that you're missing out. Like I could like there's still aspects of strength, aspects of training that you could still very much improve on, instead of just pigeonholing yourself into just one aspect of training. You could instead just get strong in the various aspects of training, and that'd be a lot more fun personally. Again, just like you said, it's going to be up to the individual, but for people like you and me, we don't see we see ourselves losing out if we don't do pretty much a bit of everything. So speaking of doing pretty much a bit of everything, where do you see yourself in the future? Like, are you ever going to give strongman a try? Are you going to go serious on calisthenics, maybe aim for some calisthenics skills, or maybe even weightlifting?
Oh man, that's actually something funny. Weightlifting, I've thought about trying it a bit. Like occasionally, I have my barbell on the floor for whatever reason, and I'm trying to put it up on the squat rack without taking off the 25s, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta clean the 70 kg real quick, and that gives me kind of a rush. Like, oh shit, I just picked that up. That was fun. Maybe I should give these a try. And yeah, I did think about doing it a bit more. Maybe these cleans. Maybe one day I'll get to them. Maybe one day I'll think about strongmen. Maybe if I get bigger, that would be a whole different world. If you look at athletes, for example, Alpha Destiny, or all of these people, you see like they're 80 kg, 70 kg shredded. They're really, really strong at everything they do. Alex from Alpha Destiny has that 180 kilogram bench press. So many nice things, but what about his squat and deadlift? What about his strongman? What if he just gained 50 kilograms, got absolutely massive, and did some Atlas stones, for example? Where would he see himself doing that? Like, it's possible. It's possible.
Well, like people like Alan Fall, who's pretty solid in his squat, bench, deadlift, but he does a bit of weightlifting and also mainly does strongman now, and he's pretty decent in all of those as well.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I think is so nice about training. I mean, people get really, really narrow in their thoughts, and they only, some people, sure, they live for powerlifting. I think, yeah, and that they only care about that, and the squat, bench, deadlift. They want to get good at that, and then they stop doing lateral raises, they stop doing curls, they stop doing back training. They don't need it. They just do their powerlifting, their 3 movements, do them with things like Shiko programs, or Shiko, however you want to say it. And they stop caring about anything else, and they get good at that, and then all of a sudden it's been 10 years and they're amazing at these. But what about the dip? What about the pull-up? What about the snatch, the clean and jerk? What about the Atlas stones, the log press, the farmer's carry? All of these different things they've never even tried. I think that's the fun in training. If you ever get stuck on something, if you ever find, oh, deadlift's been hurting a bit lately. Deadlifts just haven't been fun. I go into training, I'm not happy with the progress. I'm not happy with what's happening. You can take a break. You can try out something entirely different. Maybe you can try out grip training. Maybe you can try out arm wrestling. Maybe you can try out strongman. All of the things. And yeah,
mountain climbing, rock climbing.
Yeah. For me personally, right now, one of the things I care about most are powerlifting, getting big on the side, so doing high SFR, high stimulus to fatigue ratio accessories, and just trying to get big on top of powerlifting. And then one thing I'm really interested in right now is grip training and arm wrestling. It's something I do on the side every now and then. I think it's really fun. Arm wrestling is extremely enjoyable because it's so interactive. It's not like you're just lifting
Oh
an
yeah,
object
because
or a barbell.
it's one
You
of the few
actually
sports
do
where
something.
it's like one of the few strength sports where you're actually one on one going up against a fellow competitor, and their strength is going to matter compared to your strength in terms of whether or not you're actually going to win.
Yeah, and I think it's actually the only strength sport if you don't count fighting or martial arts. I mean, I can't think of anything else on the sport. I cannot. That's the only thing I can think of, honestly.
Sumo wrestling could be one. Yeah, where there's actually contact between two
Yeah, okay.
athletes. Yeah.
I mean,
Honestly,
yeah,
arm wrestling is such a cool thing because
Yeah.
arm wrestler, like we've all seen the clips, right? Where Devon Levitt completely destroyed Thor in arm wrestling, and he didn't even look like he was trying. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this arm wrestling stuff is crazy. If you ever get into like starting to do some of the exercises, for example, you do go through the arm wrestling motions with just a cable machine and like a small strap for your wrist. It's crazy. You look at yourself, you're doing these with like 10, 20 kilograms. That's all you're doing because you're not strong enough to do more. You're still stronger than everybody you meet in real life who does a bit of who you challenge at parties or whatever. But it's crazy how little weight this is compared to the top guys. If you look at the big guys, Levant, for example, with his 180 kilogram body weight, his wrist is as big as most average people's forearms. It's ridiculous. This guy does it with 90, 100 kilograms. He does his half reps on curls with the dumbbell that's 80 kilograms heavy or 90, 100 kilograms. It's ridiculous how strong these guys get.
Oh yeah, and like, I think I actually put this up in media in the Discord a few days ago where I don't remember who, but it was one of the arm wrestler guys who was doing wrist curls with 140 on his lap, like for reps. Like they were 10-pound dumbbells. Like these people are crazy, and that's not even to move on to people who do. I forgot. It was the spear throwing things. I forgot what it's called in the Olympics, and also the guys who do disc throws and everything. Like, if you check out the training that they do, it's super ultra specific and like really really weird. Like a javelin throws. Like you see people who do javelin throws. They do these weird skull crusher variation things where they'll do like 150, 160, or like more 3 plays or more, and they bounce it all over the place, and like people who don't know better are like, oh, like what's the point? He's just cheating us out. But like a javelin throw is being able to do 150 like these weird ass skull crushers with 150, 160 is insane, and it shows where they can throw these javelins like super far with pinpoint accuracy. It's crazy, like how different training, how different athletes in different fields train so differently from other athletes. It's very interesting.
Yeah, if some people who are kind of a meme, like if you look at Kyriakos Grizzly, the bloat lord of them all, he's obviously he's a meme. People think of him as a bit of an idiot or someone who just, I don't know, he knows nothing about how to train. But in the end, he's got a set few exercises, his forearm exercises, with the literal name forearm exercises. The barbell with this barbell on like his hip behind him, and the wrist curls with the straps. I don't know what the hell he's doing, or his Zercher shrugs. These cheeky Zercher shrugs, his half reps on squats, his sled pulls, whatever he's doing. It doesn't even have to be something. It doesn't even have to be something that people do. It's just he does a movement and he gets better at it. And it's funny because despite him being a meme, he's actually incredibly strong at these things. I've seen like Eric Bugenhagen, I think he's got a world record, right, on the behind the back deadlift.
I think unnamed.
800 pounds.
Either that or Zercher, but unnamed world record because it's not official or anything. Because there's no official thing to categorize.
Yeah, It's totally unofficial, but I don't think I've seen anybody do it heavier, no. I don't think anybody's done heavier behind the back deadlift, or at least not that I'm aware.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think I think recently, even well, not so recently, I think late last year, where Juji Mufu and Eric actually tried to copy
Yeah,
Kiyokos with
yeah,
his curl
yeah.
slings, and they couldn't even match his weight that he was doing.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Like, they were struggling on half the way for the forearm exercise. They were like, how are we gonna do this? And they're incredibly strong athletes. They are versatile. They do all of it, and they are terrible at these compared to Kyriakos Grizzly. That's the best part about training to me. If you ever you're not sure what to get stronger at, just do something. Something's gonna work out. If you're not entirely fixing yourself and having such a narrow view, like, oh, I just want to be a good powerlifter, then I mean, it's fine. I can totally get behind it. It's super fun. But if you want to be a good strength athlete and you want to do a bit of everything, then yeah, go ahead. I mean, there's just so many funny things you can do.
Oh yeah, like who knows? You might be one of those people who could actually close a 3.5, maybe even a 4 on the captain's or crush grip if you really hammer it in on grip, or you might be really good at rock climbing and you can have those really small crimps and you can totally do pull-ups on those really narrow crimps. Like that's still insane stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's so many ways that you could get strong. It doesn't have to be confined to getting strong on certain lifts or in certain sports or in certain ways. You can get
Yeah.
strong in so many different dimensions. And I know Athlete X isn't like all that good, especially if you know anything about fitness. We know that the stuff that he puts out isn't always the great, though he does have some golden nuggets here and there. And I'm especially proud of Jesse for the progress that he's made. Shout out to Jesse from Athlete X. But anyway, Jeff did say something that really resonated with me on a random Instagram live stream where he said that monsters aren't one dimensional. Now, that could be a hot take for some people because there are obviously absolute monsters who are monsters in their respective fields, and you can argue that that is one directional or one dimensional. But there are also monsters out there who are multi-directional. Like again, you got that Russian freak who can do uh, weighted pull-ups for reps with 32 kilograms while also squatting over 200, close to like 6 plates, benching close to 5 plates and stuff. Like even though his main thing is calisthenics, but you can be pretty monstrous or at least pretty good in multiple directions if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's why I don't like this narrow view of, oh, how much you bench pro. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe I just haven't been benching for 2 years and it's just not my pressing movement. I don't know. Like, that's how some people actually end up training. That's how some people actually end up thinking. And I think it's nice to not have that narrow view. For sure, if you look at Danny Grigsby, for example, right? He set that 465 kilogram sumo deadlift the other week. Was a month ago or something? I don't know. Couple
Yeah.
weeks? I don't know. Yeah, it was like 25 kilograms above the competition. It was a world record by far. Absolutely smashed it. Never been seen before in powerlifting. Totally ridiculous. I'm willing to say he's going to be the best deadlifter in the entirety of powerlifting for a bit. If he keeps up his progression, it's going to be ridiculous what this guy can put up. I totally believe in him, especially if he ever decides to go untested. Oh my.
Oh,
That's going to be crazy. He can compete untested. I'm not saying he's steroid free, I'm saying he's tested, and being untested usually gives these people a large advantage. And yeah, like, it's great. It's a great powerlifting strength feat, but at the same time, if you look at his other feats, hip hinge, for example, his deficit conventional. I'm not saying sumo is cheating. I'm just saying deficit conventional tends to be harder, and yeah, he's not that good at that. And then there are other people who are great at sumo. They're great at deficit conventional. They're great at all of these different things, and it's so cool how much strength they can express in all of these different hip hinging movements, and that's fantastic to me. That's really what I think of as a really strong athlete. I think so many different training goals are totally fair to have, and so many training views are totally fair to have. But being narrow-minded is maybe not the best thing.
Totally. Yeah. Again, disclaimer. We do know that the sumo deadlift is not a hip hinge exercise. We know, but what Tim is saying is that the dude's very strong at the sumo deadlift, but then when it comes to exercises that are mainly hip hinge, he's not as good compared to like some other guys who are also really good at sumo deadlift, but are also great in more hip hinge dominant pulls. So that's just putting that out there. Yeah, don't send hate towards us. We know the sumo deadlift is not a hip hinge exercise. We know that. We understand that. Sumo lovers, don't come attacking us, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a sumo puller myself. I love sumo deadlifts. They're fun.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, all of the different deadlift variations, just being good at a bunch of them is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and despite it being like one of the three main lifts in powerlifting, I think you have to differentiate. I think Alexander Bromley made this point as well. He thinks that strongmen are the better deadlifters overall, and I would kind of agree with that because strongmen, they do all of it. They do the axle pulls, they do the thick bar pulls, they do the deficits, the
Yeah,
block
I get what you
pulls.
mean.
They
Like
do
they're able to
all
express that
types of
deadlift
different.
strength. Right? Yeah, they're able
Yeah,
to express that deadlift strength throughout
all of it.
variations.
Yeah, in all of the different things. Meanwhile, powerlifting is kind of narrow. You've got these guys. Obviously, like a strongman's probably gonna lose in a sumo off against a powerlifter. I totally get that. Yeah, but it's gonna be the other way around if they get to doing tons of variations. And yeah, I think that's also it kind of makes sense if you look at the bodies of them, for example.
Mhm.
Because with powerlifters, you often see them being rather smaller, skinnier people, or just lower weight classes. You know, in strongman, it's all about getting big. It's all about getting really large, so you can do all types of things. And yeah, if you've always been doing these sumo deadlifts, you can maybe get some tons of good hypertrophy and stimulus out of doing a different deadlift variation for a while. That's what's really important, and really like a valuable training takeaway. If you look at, what's his name? The guy that competes with John Hack.
Jamal Bowner?
Death Grip Derek. His name.
Oh, sorry. Was thinking
Yeah, Derek, right. That guy. He's popular too. He's like a world class lift as well. And he says I constantly watch his Instagram stories, and every now and then he just says like, yeah, for about half of the entire year he doesn't even do like the powerlifting movements. He doesn't even do sumo deadlifts because he thinks it's fine to just not do them and get your hypertrophy from different movements which feel better and get you strong as well. He thinks there's a great carryover from a deficit conventional or different deadlift or hip hinge style movement. There's great carryover there, and it's may have better stimulus to fatigue ratio than just your standard competition lift.
Oh yeah, totally. That's very logical of him, honestly. And yeah, man, there's so many stuff to talk about. I'm definitely going to need to bring you out on next time on another episode. But I believe that we're running short on time now, so that's it for this episode now. And man, there's still so many stuff to talk about with you, Tim. And I'm sure you have a ton of more stuff to talk about as well. Is there anything you want to close out with? Maybe your socials or whatever?
I'm sure I wouldn't run out of things to say. Like, my Discord, maybe you could put it in the description, or I don't know, where it's symbol #2360. And yeah, my Instagram is Tim_Lorenz_lifts. That's just my personal Instagram where I share my lifts if anybody wants to follow. And yeah, I'm actually surprised if anybody listened to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, I'll totally just link me your stuff later on. I'll totally put them in the description in the video when it does come up, because this is going to be a few weeks later on. Yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to Picturefit for creating the community in the first place and creating the Discord and being able to bring up all these very talented people in the community and being able to like bring these people on to talk about their views, their journeys, their own inputs to the fitness world out there. It's been a great time, honestly.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you, man. Thank you for inviting me over.
Oh, no problem, man. It's been a ton of fun. But yeah, unfortunately, we do have to end it here now. Don't forget the standard Picturefit catchphrase. You can say this on your own, so you know which one it is.
It depends.
Well, there's always different people, different strokes for different folks. But yeah, it depends. And remember to get your protein. So that's it for now. Bye bye.